Good morning, Tim. It's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for sparing some time to talk to me today about your experience of the Leadership Trust and specifically the Leadership in Management programme. I can't wait to hear your tales and your reminiscences about your time spent with the Leadership Trust, which I believe was a few years ago. So, as you know, we're celebrating 50 years of the Leadership Trust today. So, it's really great to catch up with various people that have had a relationship with the organisation through that time. So, I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts today. So, can we start with you telling us just a little bit about your time with the Leadership Trust and specifically your participation on the Leadership Management Programme? When was that?
Right. Firstly, good morning, Joe, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of my learnings from the Leadership Trust and my ongoing relationship with the Trust. I have to say it was all a very long time ago. I was thrilled to participate in your 50th anniversary because it wasn't long after the start of the Leadership Trust that I attended the Leadership in Management course. I was a young junior executive, and I attended because one of our main board directors was a trustee of the Leadership Trust, and they picked me out and said, "You're a likely lad. We'd like to go down on this Leadership in Management program." So I think we are talking about 1978. So that's quite a long time ago. So I was aged 34 and I was a junior marketing manager in a global blue chip company. So I went down to the trust, which was fairly basic in those days. I think the place that they held the program was called the Paddocks in Simmons Yat, and it didn't have the comfort and the sophistication that people enjoy today. In fact, it didn't have the sophisticated behavior of some of the delegates who got a bit carried away sometimes in the evenings. And we had great fun one evening shepherding a load of sheep into the conference room, which didn't go down too well with the ladies who were cleaning the place up before we started.
I can imagine. No.
That's okay. So I went down with a degree of apprehension. I think the apprehension was about, firstly, because I had all the briefing about climbing up rocks and caving and canoeing and so on. So that was a challenge. Could I cope with the physical challenge of this? But I was also know that I was being closely watched by my employers. And I thought that I need to demonstrate to myself and therefore to them that I could actually not only cope, but could thrive from the learnings of the program so that they could send more people down for the experience that I had. So I came away from the course inspired and determined to put some of the personal learnings from the course into practice back in the workplace. So when I came back, I talked to my team about what I'd learned and sought their help to try and get me to adapt my behavior. Because in those days, culture in many businesses was a bit hierarchical. It was a bit command and control. The directors are more senior than anybody else, so they know all the answers, so they'll tell you what to do. So actually trying to bring about the learnings into the way that I operate from day to day required a big change because I had tried to role model myself from chief executive, who at the time was, a bit of an autocrat. So that was quite challenging, but it was an inspiring week, and I came away with a very much enhanced level of self-confidence because I could cope with, going down the abseiling, doing the canoeing, going down into the caves and so on. So that builds self-confidence. Secondly, when you're asked to actually lead some of the projects, that if you don't make a complete mess of them and people give you the positive feedback, you think, aha, I can actually cope with this, and it's a different sort of world. So that was my experience of that week down in Simmons Yett. And of course, that was the point at which I came across David Gilbert Smith for the first time. And I still have it on my desk upstairs. The course brochure that we had at the end of the program, which was endorsed and I think mostly written by David Gilbert Smith. And I still dip into that from time to time and just remind myself of some of the things that I'm trying to put into practice. And part of David's philosophy was about self-realization, which of course comes from self-confidence and knowledge and the ability to project yourself in an appropriate and consistent way so people know what they're getting. And subsequently, I was invited by David Gilbert Smith to lunch at the Savoy. I can't quite remember why, but I think he was trying to persuade me to go on the follow-up course. And I saw at the Savoy this very urbane, sophisticated man in his grey pinstripe suit. And that was a very different contrast to David with a hard glint in his eye, with his clipboard and his jeans and his leadership trust. He was very hard to read during the programs, particularly when we were making idiots of ourselves doing the exercises. And I think the other point that I would make, that in those days, it was very much a transactional process. It was about being given a pile of, ropes and planks and poles and things to build a bridge or build a raft, make a complete mess of it, take the learnings from it and do it again and hopefully get a better result. And it was only when Janet Richardson, who subsequently, I remember, became David's wife, that I think she was a psychologist. Am I right? She's a psychologist, yes.
Yeah.
So she brought a huge degree of intellectual learning to the process. And David learned to, incorporate that in the various sessions. And I think over time, the quality of the program was enhanced significantly.
Is there anything that David Gilbert Smith said to you that sticks with you now? Any sort of gems, words of wisdom that you can still remember?
I think probably, Joe, the main learning, which I touched on a few minutes ago, was the need to achieve self-realization through the stages of self-awareness, which you get being exposed to that sort of program, self-control, and most importantly, self-confidence. And the things that we're all apprehensive about, particularly as younger leaders, standing up in front of a room of 100 people. You had practice doing that on the course in some quite challenging circumstances. In the end, you came back with the confidence enhanced. Not that I mean I became a talented public speaker in one session, but over time, you got more used to it.
Yeah.
So I think that was the main learning I got from David.
Yeah. And what sticks in your mind about the actual exercises that you did? Can you remember any of the tasks that you were challenged with? Because I only did the program back in April, May, and it's on my mind still, the tasks that we had and the yellow sheets that we were given with the briefings.
Yeah. No, I remember building a raft and all of us falling in the river because the raft fell apart. I can remember
it actually fell apart.
It actually fell apart. I mean, their commitment to safety was of a pretty high order. So you had people in the canoes further downstream to to fish you out. But a number of us, I think I avoided it, but a number of us actually fell in the river and had to be rescued. So that was quite an interesting project. The caving was very much a personal thing. We didn't do projects underground, but actually going down into the caves, because a lot of us suffer from a bit of claustrophobia, was quite challenging. But again, you came out and you say, I can do this, which was good. The abseiling, because I don't have a great love for heights, was quite challenging. And I remember standing on the surface, all roped up, ready to go, and a bit apprehensive. And the instructor said, well, I'm sure you can do this. We had your chairman down here a couple of months ago, and he went down. And I said, yes, but actually he was a major in the parachute brigade.
So not such
who
a big
jumped
thing
an
for him.
arm. Anyway, we did it and we got down.
Yeah, I did the
So I
abseiling
think
and climbing.
Yeah, but I mean, we are talking about 47 years ago.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that I can remember.
It's an amazing feeling, isn't it, when you do it and you overcome your fears, and you've got the support of
Yeah,
everybody
yeah,
else, of course, as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But this was a challenge to come back to a major organization that had a command and control culture, and you succeeded by being seen to be decisive and aggressive and let me tell you how it is. And of course, the world's not like that. And I think one of the things I did when I got back is publish a chart of my little department, which was probably only 5 or 6 people at that stage. And I inverted the organization chart and put the leader at the bottom of the chart. I'm sure you've seen this done elsewhere. And recognizing that the customer-facing people, the consumer-facing people through the advertising and marketing, the salespeople who actually go out and see the customers, and the people in the factories who make the products, they're the actual key people. And the role of a leader is to facilitate their effectiveness and support their development.
Yeah. I was going
So
to ask,
that
I was going to ask, is there anything in particular that you've used frequently that you learned during the LM, that you've used, any of the tools or just little pieces of information that you've been able to sort of pull out through your career?
yes, I would dip into the guide that David gave us at the end of the program. I think the process that I used and continue to use today is actually take time out with individuals or teams to say, right, that was a huge success or that was a bit of a failure. Let's take a bit of time out and examine what went right, what we feel good about, what went wrong, and what we would do differently the next time. So that was a sort of continuous process of self-improvement, because I think that a major role of leaders is the coaching and development of people in their teams. I think that you can always judge the effectiveness of a leader by looking at the people in their team who work with them. And if they have self-confidence, the freedom to act, to make decisions, take risks, and so on, that's probably a more effective team. And I think this was one of the issues that inspired David Gilbert Smith to start the Leadership Trust, because he is, you'll know, saw active service, I think, in Korea, and he became fascinated about why one platoon was more effective than another and what the points of difference were. And it usually came back to the quality of the leadership in that particular officer.
It's really interesting what you were saying there about the chance to take a step back and review and reflect on your behaviours and the team behaviours, because that's obviously really deeply embedded as part of the leadership and management programme, that that chance to review all of the tasks, all of the opportunities that you've had through that week. And those are some of the moments that really stick in my mind. The reflections and the feedback from my colleagues has really stuck with me after I've come back into the real world on the back of the leadership and management. And it's still so important today, isn't it? That opportunity to take a step back and think about the way you do things and the way you interact with people. That idea of holding a mirror, having a mirror held up to yourself so that you can actually think about the way you're behaving and the way you're interacting and in a highly pressured situation. I think that was one of the big surprises to me about the LM. During that week, it did feel like you were under a lot of pressure. You were put under that pressure deliberately so that you could reflect about how you work, how you operate in that environment. So do you think that sort of learning is important for leaders going forward? Are leaders of the future going to need that sort of experiential learning?
Absolutely. I think it is absolutely vital. And again, if you continued to operate in a sort of command and control leadership situation, you probably wouldn't be interested. You think of some of the leaders we've known or read about over the last 20 years, some of the autocrats, they would never have been receptive to feedback from members of their team. And if they were in any way critical or had suggestions about how the leader could adapt his or her behavior, then they probably got the sack.
Yeah.
Or pushed to one side.
Do you think that still exists today in some organizations? That command and control?
I'm sure it does. Yeah, I'm sure it does. And I think the Leadership Trust should suss out through observation some of those organizations and send them a few leaflets and get one or two of them down on the course.
Absolutely.
Because honestly, it was a transformational experience, and it stuck with me 47 years later.
Yeah.
And I try and apply the learnings not only in commercial situations, but with friends, with charity things, with your family as well. The principles still apply.
Absolutely. And thinking about the future, what do you think are the characteristics, the traits that leaders of the future are going to need?
Well, I think if you can take as a base point the basic qualities of leadership that we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes or so, I think in the world that we now live in, leadership needs to be adaptable, situational leadership to the challenges of the time. I think as we become more of a global world, hopefully a progressive world, we need to have the skills to integrate a diverse range of values and behaviors from different nationalities, different cultures, and so on, with a real sense of teamwork. And that is a tough challenge. One only has to think of the differences in culture between our European friends from the different countries, and to actually inspire the development of a common culture, real teamwork across teams, across businesses, across countries. That is quite a challenge. And success in that, of course, starts with your own leadership style and the self-confidence and the self-control to actually inspire that sort of change. Not easy. And I did a spell as head of global transformation in a major blue chip PLC, which for years and years and years had been run on the basis of a number of what we called robber baronies. If you were running France, you made money in France to invest in France. And we changed the organization to become an organization where you had somebody responsible, for example, for production on a worldwide basis. So instead of the French general manager taking the monies to put into a new factory in France, we could stand back and look at this holistically and actually say the right place to put that factory is in Spain and transfer the production to France. So we had the capacity to do that. Again, marketing, we don't want different marketing strategies in different businesses. We're a global business. We want a commonality in marketing and packaging and so on. So if you go to Spain on holiday and you want a particular product, you buy in the UK, if it's available in Spain, it should look the same and operate equally effectively. And that was quite tough because senior people who'd run their own empires didn't always remember that they were answerable to the shareholders. They found it quite difficult to change their behavior. And I had to, with the agreement of the chief executive, do some quite interesting things like the main board meetings, which I facilitated. The directors would come in and sit in their usual place, and some of them would hide behind a pile of books so they could read their emails and so on. So I went in with my team one day and removed all the chairs from the boardroom. So when they came in, there was nowhere for them to sit down. So what's happened to all the chairs, So the chief executive said, sorry, we're going to operate today standing up. And if you're actually a member of the Privy Council and had a meeting with the Queen, you not only have to stand up, but you should have a tailcoat on as well. So those sort of things disturb people, but in the end, you got from most of them this aha moment. I see what you're trying to do.
Wow.
We had one or two directors who I'm sure were very effective, but who are protected by secretaries and vases of flowers and so on. But most people didn't know what they were about because they ate separately in the directors' dining room and so on. And so one or two of them, again with the agreement of my boss, we came in overnight and moved their desks out into the corridor. So when they came in the next morning, they were sitting out in the corridor because people walking up and down. The word spread, so everybody deviated down that particular corridor to have a word with them. And I remember one particular director, sadly no longer alive, he said, that was a real transformational moment in my life. I learned that my job was actually about people, because you've got the people doing their jobs effectively, then you don't have to worry about the numbers, they come through. So that was quite interesting. So I think, sorry.
I was going to say, you just
Sorry,
said,
go on.
you just mentioned aha moments. Was there an aha moment for you during your leadership in management experience?
Yes, I think one I can think of, which I think was on the follow-up to leadership management, was when they dressed up one of the conference rooms as a spaceship, and we got our instructions by text, I suppose, would have been text, and it says, I can't remember, from somewhere else in the building. And I was elected the commander of this spaceship. So we had to do various projects. And there was one project where we had a technical problem, and I had to send somebody outside the spaceship with a spanner or whatever to sort out this problem. The challenge was that it was a one-way trip. There was no return journey. So whoever went out to do this job was not going to come back. So the challenge for me as the leader, as the commander, was to select. Why did I select the individual that I did select? And I seem to remember I did that largely on the basis of technical skill. And how did I deal with him or her and brief him? And that was tough. And that was a realization of what real decision-making can be about. Anyway, I selected somebody, he went out and he didn't come back. And we then had the feedback. which actually was facilitated by David Gilbert-Smith. And the feedback from the team and from David was very positive, not wanting to crow about it. And I think that was for me an aha moment, because I realized it's tough. It can be very tough at the top, but you have you have to have the self-belief and the self-confidence that you've analyzed the problem and handled it in the right way. So that was a moment of great learning. Right, I'd just like to say, Joe, firstly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this chat. And secondly, to say the Leadership Trust, as you'll have gathered from what I've said, has been a major part of my learning and development in life. I think it is a fantastic organization. I've seen it develop over time. The fact that it's still around, preaching David Gilbert-Smith's gospel nearly 50 years on, I think is amazing. And I wish it every possible success over the next 50 years. I don't think I'll be here to see the centenary, but I think the wonderful work you do will continue to help the leaders of the future develop their skills.
Thank you so much.